Hello everyone, and welcome back to my kitchen table where I talk about myself and my life in music. I get a number of questions about my gear, especially my guitars, so today I thought I would tell you about my number one axe, my 1952 reissue Tele. I played 3 guitars before owning this one, but in a way I see this as my first since it's the first one that I bought. Rewind to 1999, I asked my parents if I could take guitar lessons after seeing Blink-182 play All the Small Things at the MTV Music Awards. I'd started and stopped a bunch of other activities like judo, clarinet lessons, and soccer, so my parents weren't sure that I would stick with it. Spoiler alert, I did. We opted to borrow a guitar from our neighbor before spending any money on an instrument. That guitar was a Nevada Stratocaster copy, a company I haven't encountered since that, and it was probably about as cheap as they come. I played that for my first year, I enjoyed my lessons, I learned a couple tunes and was getting along well with my instructor, whom I've remained friends with some 17 years later. My interest in the instrument paid off and my parents bought me a used blue Squier Strat. Fast forward a couple more years and a friend of mine had been given 2 guitars from a wealthy family member. One he kept for himself, that was a Gibson Les Paul Studio, and the other was a beat up Ibanez Les Paul copy. He lent me the Ibanez and my dad fixed it up. I still have it with me all these years later. Fingers crossed he doesn't come asking for it anytime soon. Anyways, I'd been playing guitar for about 2 to 3 years and was really getting into it. I'd become one of the better guitarists in my group of friends, but that wasn't always the case. After a year of playing, all my friends were playing stuff that I couldn't. I asked my guitar teacher about this and he told me that I needed to master the basics before rushing into the more advanced stuff. This method ended up paying off. By the time we did get to the more complicated stuff, I could understand it and actually get something from it. This is a life lesson that stays with me to this day. I was getting more and more into guitar, playing it as much as I could. I had a subscription to Guitar One magazine. I was discovering all this new music and was truly bit by the music bug. I was 15 and had been dreaming for a while of owning a high-end instrument and finally decided I would make it happen. I spent countless hours going to the local music store, ogling the instruments, and I remember one specifically that stood out. It was a 3 pickup Cherry Gibson Les Paul, but it was $5,000 and that was well out of my price range. It was there that an employee gave me one of those Fender catalogs which I would flip through, studying all the pages. I eventually decided that I wanted a Telecaster. The reason for this was I wanted to be different. I knew a bunch of people with Les Pauls, some of my friends had Stratocasters, and I knew a couple guys with SGs. Nobody owned a Tele, so I was going to be that guy. I settled on the 1952 reissue partly because Keith Richards and Bruce Springsteen played one similar, but also I liked the finish and it had a wider neck, which shouldn't have been all that important since I have tiny little hands, but Stevie Ray Vaughan used a big neck and he was one of my main inspirations. It was set in my mind that I was going to own that instrument, and when I get an idea in my mind, I make it happen for better or worse. That's part of my personality. I was going to buy that guitar. However, I had next to no money, so that was the next hurdle to conquer. I made a deal with my parents that if I saved up half, they would pay the other half and I would pay them back. The price tag was $1,875, so I had some work to do. I'd been reffing hockey for a bit, spending that money on whatever teenagers spend money on. Instead of blowing that money on CDs, movies, and whatever, I saved up all that money, did a couple odd jobs, mowed some lawns, and after about a year, I had $950. I remember walking into the guitar store to special order the instrument and the sense of pride I had when it finally came in. The first thing I played on this instrument was the intro to Johnny B. Goode, and man did it feel great. It looked amazing and it sounded like everything I hoped it would. Though I've accumulated a lot of instruments since then, this baby will always be my number one. I've played countless gigs with it and use it time and time again in videos. There have been a number of modifications I've made to it over the years. First, my dad rewired the pickup configuration. Originally, it was a 3 selector switch, the back position being the bridge pickup, the middle position being the neck pickup, and the front position was the neck pickup, but for some reason it had the highs rolled off. I'm not sure why they wired it that way, but it was true to what they did back in the 50s. We switched it out so that it was the standard 3-way selector for a Tele. My dad also swapped out the old wiring with pinball machine wires from the 1950s to make it a little more authentic. I'm not sure it changes the sound at all, but it's kind of cool. Next up, I got my initials carved in the plate here. Why? Because Stevie Ray Vaughan had his initials on his guitar and I wanted to be just like him. The pickups were then swapped out from the stock vintage Fender ones to Texas Specials. Again, this is because those are the ones that are in the Stevie Ray Vaughan signature Strat. You think I probably would have bought a Strat, but while I wanted to emulate SRV in some respects, I didn't want to copy everything he did. Eventually we swapped out the 3-way selector with a 4-way one. The 4th position is the neck pickup with a fatter tone. I don't know what's going on there, but it sounds cool. The saddles are Graph-Tech string savers, which I absolutely swear by. Before putting these on, I used to break strings regularly. Since I put them on some 10 years ago, I haven't broken a single string since. After years of playing this guitar, the frets were worn down to next to nothing, so I eventually replaced them with jumbo frets and had some of the lacquer removed from the neck. It plays perfectly now, the strings are easier to bend, and it feels like butter. And also after years of playing, there are numerous dings and dents all over it, the worst of which occurred when some girl drunkenly stumbled on stage during a set break and knocked my sweet little baby off its guitar stand. A sizable chunk of the finish was broken off, and to prevent it from flaking further, my dad put some Varathane or something like that in it. So that's the story behind my number one guitar. It's nothing overly expensive or fancy, but to me it's irreplaceable. To let me know you made it all the way to the end of this video, why don't you leave me a comment and let me know about your number one axe. If you feel so inclined, leave some details or let me know a story about it as well. Thank you all for watching. This video is brought to you with the help of the London-based band Los Padres. I would describe their sound as unlike anything I've heard before, but at the same time incredibly catchy and very enjoyable. I was listening to their stuff on Bandcamp, and it's like somehow a blues band infused itself with a classic NES sound cartridge. They're super cool, and I would recommend checking them out at lostpadres.bandcamp.com. My favorite song over there is the tune Help Us. If you're interested in getting your work featured in a video like this, head over to my Patreon page where that's one of the rewards. Through that program, I also offer a giveaway to everyone involved. This month's prize is the Big Spender Spinning Speaker guitar pedal. Find info for all that and more by hitting that link over there. I'm Samurai Guitarist. Thank you all again for watching, and I will see you soon.